Alright, so now that we've shown how to completely box all of the runs, we we need our coverage D. We need something that's going to force our opponent's hand and really limit what they can do. Coverage defense is completely dominant in this year's game. I know everybody wants the hot blitzes. Everybody wants the, new Mike scrape. Everybody wants those type of things. And in all reality, if you think about it, what won the Madden Challenge Draft Champions tournament? Well, that was dime two man under. The same defense that has been completely dominant throughout the entire year, it seems. So, with that being said, you can't sleep on coverage defenses. Coverage defenses force your opponent to methodically go down the field by completing open reads, specifically man defense. So, with that being said, our main coverage defense is going to be nickel 335 two man under. This is hands down one of my, if not my favorite play in the entire game. And that's because it completely blows up the run. We can blitz out of it. We can play max coverage D. We can completely box our opponent and never leave this defense. So you can call this play flipped, unflipped. It doesn't truly matter. For this purpose, we'll just call it flipped. Now, what we like to do coverage-wise, say they're, I don't know what playbook I'm in. Let's see, four verticals, for instance. Four verticals is not a amazing man beater, but it does do a decent job. So, all we want to do in this case is simply spy our defensive tackle and then move this middle linebacker over to the right. And what this is going to do is this gives us that three-man rush, and it's going to contain the run really well. You could then adjust the safeties how you see fit. You could pick up this defensive end if you want to lurk with him. You have a bunch of options in what you can do. So, for instance, like I said, this is four verticals. We could hook zone that guy, play on the D end, and you'll see that in this case we would just guard the running back and nothing's open. You're just chucking passes into zones, and I mean you're not going to be able to run the ball that well. Let's see, we'll go to an inside zone right here. So, in theory, I would like to run this play stock without flipping it. So we'll go ahead and we'll do that. Now we're still going to do the same thing. We're going to spy the D end. We're going to adjust our coverage how we see fit. So maybe do like a corner here. Then we're going to pick up this defensive end. So now we're lurking over here. So you'll see inside zone that there's nowhere truly to go. I mean, you can't really run the ball too well. I mean, you may break a run here and there, but you're not going to kill somebody running the ball. If they're hell-bent on running, simply do something like this. Move the guy over, pick up the D end, stand right here, and now you're just you're still lurking. Now you see, at that time they got the dot. But once again, if we make that one simple adjustment by hook zoning the free safety, that dot is gone. You go back to an inside zone once I find one. Alright, so if we wanted to completely stop inside zone, you just do something like this. Move dude over, pick this guy up, play over here. Now we just adjust. I mean, inside zone gets what? A yard or two there? I mean, it's truly dominant because you're forcing your opponent to show every one of their reads. You just got to get used to what you can put these safeties in. I mean, you could always do the nations flats, which oddly enough a lot of people don't do, even though they should, because of fear of getting beat deep. But if you're afraid to get beat deep, put them in purples. I mean, purples drop back a little bit farther. You could also do dual yellows. I mean, you could spy this guy, leave the D tackle rushing. I mean, you could really just mix it up and completely take away your opponent's reads. I mean, look, there's nothing open, and you're getting screamed at by a two-man rush. So as long as you have decent user, and as long as you have a spy out there, it doesn't matter if it's the linebacker, it doesn't matter if it's one of the defensive ends. Like in this case, we'll spy that D end. We're going to zone him out. I mean, you can see that just the pressure comes in. 3-3-5 is a phenomenal defense because of the random pressure. So when you start taking away your opponent's first reads and forcing them into your second and third reads, by that time, chances are they are sacked. The one thing that I will say, the one downside to the 3-3-5 is you have two linebackers in coverage, specifically man coverage. So you'll have essentially two people that are going to get beat. Now, if my opponent, something that I'll do just to see what my opponent does against it, is I'll do a defense like this, where I put both outside linebackers into flats, or purples, depending on if they're hitting corner routes or whatnot, and I'll just lurk the middle with this middle linebacker. Now, sure, somebody might be able to run the ball on this, but how do they know when we're in our run defense? That's the thing, is every time they run, they're kind of playing Russian roulette. Either they're going to run, we're going to completely stop it, or they're going to, pass into these max coverage defenses. And this game's just too difficult to consistently pass into max coverage. So the people that I recommend, just switching up mans and zones and whatnot, the three linebackers, and then the two safeties. If you're going to do anything with the defensive line, I recommend a spy. So you could do something like this right here, where in this case we are now in charge of the middle of the field with this guy blitzing. You see, pretty much, I got shook, but I mean, that was my guy. But yeah, like I said, I mean, it's once you get used to this defense and you get used to adjusting out of this, your opponent's really going to have a hard time, because you're kind of creating these, dual man zone combos, and they're really going to throw your opponent off. Whether it's the linebackers or if it's safeties, I mean, you do something like this right here. Like I said, this is probably my favorite setup, my base setup. And then if they have a mobile quarterback like a Cam or something like that, I would then put somebody into a spy. I might put the D tackle in a spy, it might be the D end. But I mean, you pretty much you're not going to have anybody open. So by the time that you can typically find somebody, it's a wrap. As long as you have decent pass rushers. The one downside I have right here is I have Pinkins at D end. I mean, if that's a Von Miller or hell, anybody on Mutt, I mean, you're going to get pressure. So don't be afraid to mix up the coverage defense. If you want the other plays that I do use out of coverage, I use the cover 4 drop. I use the crash 2 play, which is just a cover 2. And with the cover 2, what I like to do is I flat the nickelback, and then I yellow the corner on that side. So then after that, you could mix and match. So say you want to take this defensive, or this guy over here, you could put him into a spy, you could blitz him. I mean, you could really do whatever you want. Man him up to somebody. Typically I would spy him and then just rush the 3 people, or I would pick up one of the defensive ends and now I would guard deep back here, so it would look something similar to this. So I mean, when you start seeing this, it's just, I mean, you have nothing open until way late. So if your opponent is afraid of the pass rush, or if you have a good pass rush, it's just going to be a headache. Cover 3 buzz drop is another phenomenal one. So you see, you just got good coverage everywhere. You can play on whoever you want. Spy, spy D tackle, play the middle of the field yourself. And you'll see that pretty much, I mean, they're going to jump down on everything, and by the time they can find a read consistently, you should get the pressure in. Now, just you gotta pay attention though. You gotta pay attention to what they're running. Like I said earlier on, 9 out of 10 opponents that you face, more than that, honestly, are going to have a handful of main plays that they go to. Somebody's not going to be able to beat man to man out of every formation in their book. Um, Same thing with cover four. Most people have a one or two play cover four beater. You know, they're going to make the same hot route, same adjustments, and you're going to be able to stop cover four, or you'll be able to adjust to those. It becomes a chess match when you start mixing in coverage defenses. And in this year, the way that the pressure is, you can still generate pretty solid pressure without blitzing a lot of people. So that is why I prefer to run a lot of coverage opposed to blitzing heavily every play. But with that being said, I've rambled on enough for a coverage defense. Pretty much, you just got to get used to what your opponent is running. You have to pay attention to the fact that you have two linebackers that are in man coverage. Obviously, they are not going to be able to stick with 97 speed receivers. So you can zone them out. You can, make sure you have help over top. You could zone them out, man up safeties. I mean, you just mix and match, throw different zones out there, see what your opponent does. And eventually, no matter how good your opponent is, they're not going to be able to hit the correct read every single play. So as long as you don't become consistent with what your adjustments are, they're not going to be able to consistently beat it because they're going to constantly be looking to that second and third read. So that is enough, and on to the next one.